As you can see right here, Marion and First. There appears to be an injured party. Witnesses report multiple gunshots. For those of you who are just turning in, we're here in downtown Seattle, near Pioneer Square, where there was a shooting. It appears there's been multiple gunshots. There may be a victim. It appears that medics are rendering care right now. Officers have been on the scene speaking with witnesses, gathering information. There's probably about 30 police units here on the scene at this time. Seattle has had a wave of gun violence here in downtown and across the city. Several individuals have been lost. Thank you for tuning in. There is actually a gunshot, multiple gunshots here in Seattle, near Pioneer Square. It's actually adjacent to the federal building, which you can see right here. There's about 30 cars, patrol cars, here on scene. Multiple levels of police management. None that I recognize. I spent, I'm a journalist, and I spent a great deal of time covering protests and that kind of thing here in Seattle. Exactly. Let's hope that nobody lost their life tonight. This literally just happened minutes ago. Believe it or not, I was leaving my office where I was working on an article, and I went to get a snack at the 7-Eleven when multiple gunshots rang out. Thank you very much, Kelsey. I spent a lot of time covering the police here in Seattle, mostly related to protests that stemmed from the death of George Floyd. I covered, dozens and dozens of protests, over a year and a half. So I'm very familiar with law enforcement here in Seattle. Lately, they've been covering the death of several individuals who've been shot here in downtown and across the city of Seattle. We're right here next to the federal building at Marion and First. All up and down First is a number of patrol vehicles who are responding to this incident. Yeah, the good point, AMPS 277. A lot of people are concerned about threats to cut funding to the Seattle Police. So far, they seem to have gotten an increase, actually, from what I understand. I haven't been reading a lot of articles about cops at the moment or the Seattle Police Department. I'm doing more mundane fare these days. I literally was in my office writing an article about the Girl Scouts, actually. So I wasn't expecting any action tonight. Thank you, Dope Plan. Yeah, certainly the leadership here in Seattle has changed a great deal, and their views on the, the law enforcement, funding for law enforcement, adding officers to the, the force. They're far more friendly, right now than they have been in the past. Thank you much, Kelsey. I feel quite safe right now because there's probably over 100 officers here, 30 patrol vehicles, several firefighters. So it's probably one of the safest places to be in Seattle right now. It appears that officers are looking for spent shell casings, signs of bullet damage in the side of the building or in this wall over here. Obviously, this will help them in their investigation. I'm not even joking when I say there's been several shootings in the Seattle area this few weeks, the last couple months, that are very alarming to the public. For those of you who are just tuning in, I'm a journalist here in Seattle. I spent a lot of time covering police actions, mostly stemming from protests related to George Floyd. And there was multiple gunshots that rang out here in downtown Seattle near Pioneer Square. We're actually right here next to the federal building in Seattle, if you're familiar with that building. It's unclear if anyone is injured, but paramedics from the Seattle Fire Department were on scene and seeming to provide aid or rushing to provide aid. It's unclear what the outcome of that was. If anyone was killed in this incident, it's unclear. However, law enforcement are talking. They're also searching for spent shell casings, looking for damage, maybe a bullet fragment lodged into the building. Oops. Looks like they're taking... No, they're not. Looks like they were just moving it to let the officer by. This is unfortunately just one of many incidents lately of gun violence here in the streets of Seattle. At this point, there's an investigation into what exactly happened here. Officers are investigating. They're looking for any evidence on the scene. And I don't really think this is related to the Antifa movement or the protests for Black Lives. I think this is simply something to do with where we're at in the city of Seattle right now with gun violence. There's multiple reasons, in my opinion, for this. A lot of it having to do with the prevalence of guns, the homelessness, the unhoused, violence being committed against them and also amongst each other, unfortunately. Since multiple gunshots were heard, it's really unclear if this could be related to, some kind of domestic situation, whether it was related to gang violence, or perhaps it was something to do with the federal building, which is also just right here. For those of you turning in, this is the Seattle Federal Building where this incident happened. Many of the patrol units are now moving away, so there's far less than 30 here. Maybe 20 at this point. They are surrounding this whole several block area. It looks like they're establishing a command post. In situations like this, it's possible that someone may have lost their life tonight. From the looks of it, it looks like the Seattle Fire Department is removing themselves from the situation, so it's unclear if they provided aid and are taking someone to Harborview Medical Center, which is the local trauma center, which is actually not far away. you know, just maybe a mile and a half. Um, oh, I love Angus Cloud. It was you. I'll let the officers know that you were involved in this incident. They'll probably be looking for you. Unfortunately, this scene is all too common these days in the streets of Seattle. Yeah, usually after an incident like this, there wouldn't be so many cops still sort of lingering together. They would be looking for evidence. We did see some of that. So it leads me to believe there could have been something related to do with the federal building, which is right here, or perhaps someone unfortunately did pass away. We've had many, many folks lose their lives in the streets of Seattle over the last couple years, especially in the last year and over the last couple weeks. I do see officers marking evidence. If you look closely, you can see little evidence tags. Those are little yellow tags on the ground. This is a common practice. They will tag the evidence and take pictures. Unfortunately, I can't do what I normally would do, which is be to check the Seattle Police Department blotter or call the Seattle Police Department media individuals, which is something I would normally do. I am a regular journalist here in Seattle. Ironically, I was actually at my office writing an article when I went to get a snack at the local 7-Eleven in the Pioneer Square. And then just down the block, this shooting happened at First and Marion. I can tell you nothing will get your heart pumping like multiple gunshots. And when most people were running away, I ran towards the scene, being the idiot that I am. It's in our blood. You can actually see the snacks I purchased at 7-Eleven. I have to give it up to 7-Eleven for their cheese crunch, fiery cheese crunch. That is some good snacking. My guess is that this is more than a shooting investigation, that someone potentially could have been injured.
There's not. They're not outside. Okay. Just so you know, we're audio and video recording. Okay. So let's start from the beginning.
Police are still talking to witnesses.
We're doing normal dinner service. We hear like a couple loud ass booms, right? And like, who's that? And these kids are sitting at this table and they're like, I don't know what that is. Oh, sorry.
We're at First and Marion, where there was reports of multiple gunshots. I actually was in the area down the street when this happened. It's unclear if anyone was injured.
Cool. I'm Officer Lover at the Seattle Police Department. This statement contains SPD death.
You can see that the officers are collecting evidence from the scene.
President is myself, Officer Vasquez.
It's very much an active investigation.
Please say and spell your full name and your address.
Anthony Lombardi, AMPHOLOMBARDI.
We're at the scene of a shooting here in downtown Seattle, near Pioneer Square. They're still collecting the evidence here. Multiple gunshots were heard.
We heard a bunch of loud bangs. We were obviously concerned. came out. I'm thinking it's like a truck. It's like hit something out here. And then when I stepped around the corner,
We're near the federal building, as you can see right here.
like halfway up the block, there was a dude shooting up in the air.
What kind of,
It was a shotgun.
it
And
was pointing directly in the air?
I mean, I didn't see the first few, but when I stepped out, I heard them and I was like, what is that? It's coming from around the corner. I turned around.
So here in the scene of
and it looked like
a shooting,
It looked like, I thought
someone
it
was firing into the air, multiple gunshots.
Right. And I see him shooting. I'm like, this is obviously not good. And when he turns and sees me, so then I ran inside. I was like, shit, I don't know if this is coming down. He ended up evacuating everybody out into the stairwell in the building. I called the cops.
When you saw him shooting, did it look like he was pointing at anyone or anything in particular, or just kind of up and
There was nobody around. I mean, there was nobody around. It looked like he was shooting at the building. Fuck no, I was running, bro.
All right, and how many shots do you think you totally heard and saw?
Total hurt.
Oh, Courtney,
Like
or
10.
Courtness. Yeah, I see your comment.
Okay, okay.
I mean,
Which
I
direction?
saw was like 2.
Okay.
And many people here in Seattle that would agree with you for sure.
Was he walking down or anything?
He, when I first came around the corner, he was facing southeast and then turned and saw me.
Did he like point at you? And he just kind of told and saw you?
I'm actually next to the federal building at First and Marion.
Looked like with a gun.
Oh man,
I'm
I'm
running.
Okay, is there anything else you think's important for us? No. Okay. Would you be willing to testify to the contents of the statement in court?
Yeah.
You declare under penalty of perjury under the laws of the state of Washington. The way of statement in this statement.
Police are currently having an active investigation.
If you wish to
You can
have
see the little
information disclosed,
cards where they are flagging evidence.
so it's kind of like you seem, yeah, no, okay.
I'm a journalist here in Seattle.
Appreciate you talking to us. Very sorry this had to happen to you tonight. It's a pretty traumatic experience. Any questions? No. Well, no one's injured. Does anyone in there need anything?
No.
Well, this is unfortunately only one of many incidents lately of gun violence in the streets of Seattle.
We're going to be here all night.
Several individuals have died.
We're,
Basically, what happened was I actually was writing an article. I took a break
so they
to go to the local 7-Eleven,
shot him or what?
and I heard multiple gunshots, and so I left that area, went down the street where I saw multiple police response, and there was an individual who apparently was shooting multiple rounds with a gunshot. It's unclear if he had a target in mind or if it was into the air. Multiple gunshots were fired.
Thanks, Tony.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. All right, bye.
I do hear officers say that nobody was injured, thank God. That's a nice change for a while. It looks like we have leadership here on the scene. Someone from the Seattle Police Department. Perhaps a detective. What is scary is this individual apparently ran up this hill, was shooting on the sidewalk, multiple gunshots with a, what do you call that, shotgun. Obviously there's spent casings and other evidence over here that police have marked. What I overheard, I believe, is that nobody was injured. I am surprised they said they'd be here all night. Probably because of the threat to the public, an individual shooting multiple, gunshots into the air would be very alarming to anyone here in downtown or near Pioneer Square. No, this is actually my first live. I was actually working at the Pioneer Building on an article about the Girl Scouts, believe it or not. And then I went to the store to get snacks. Heard multiple gunshots, and as most people were running away, I ran towards the scene. Us journalists here in Seattle were kind of crazy. Those that know me know that I, spent a year and a half covering protests for Black Lives here in Seattle, so I'm very familiar with members of law enforcement. What I overheard, I believe, is that nobody did die. I hope that is true. I cannot confirm that because I'm here on the scene. Normally I would check the police blotter, Twitter, for the Seattle Police Department, but unfortunately, I'm here on the scene. There has been a whole bunch of incidents of gun violence in Seattle over the last couple months, especially over the last couple weeks, where at least, one or two individuals have died from gunshots here in downtown Seattle. There's just a couple in the last couple weeks at 3rd and Pike. There has been an emphasis patrol there. There's been a, what do you call that, a temporary precinct that was set up there to sort of diminish the amount of crime happening at that intersection. This is not near there. This is actually near the federal building here in Seattle at 1st and Marion. So, and it is unclear what the motive was for this individual who apparently ran up the sidewalk and began shooting with a shotgun, multiple shots, is what I heard from witnesses. So police did say they'll be here all night investigating. This restaurant right here was right next to the scene of the violence. It appears that they cleared out and are closing early. Obviously, the staff here are obviously really, rattled by what happened. So it looks like it was a powwow of Seattle Police Department leadership and maybe a detective. It's unclear. There have been about 30 patrol cars, swarming to this area. Many of them have now left. So did the fire department. My understanding is no one was hurt, but I can't verify that because I'm here on the scene. It's unclear exactly the extent of what happened here. Yeah, it's hard for me to know. I was actually at the 7-Eleven picking up my snacks, as you can see here. When I heard multiple gunshots and came to the scene, which is only a couple blocks from the 7-Eleven. We're now at 1st and Marion where this incident happened. So I would say maybe 8:15, 8:20. We're here in the streets of Seattle where there's been multiple incidences of gunshots. Over the last couple weeks, a couple people have died. Not necessarily right here in this area. But unfortunately, there has been a rise in gun crime here in Washington State, in King County, and here in Seattle especially. Thank you, Auntie. Like I said, most people were running from the scene as I was running towards it. Several people warned me to stay away, that there was an active gunman. But what happens when you're a journalist is sometimes, that need to get the story just overtakes you. Yeah, I heard the shots, but I was coming out of the 7-Eleven. So I was probably like a block and a half or 2 blocks away at the time of the incident. So I wasn't right here exactly when it happened. For those of you familiar with Seattle, you will know the federal building here at 1st and Marion. It's a landmark here in the city. As I'll show you in a minute, officers have marked off several, pieces of evidence, probably gunshots, fragments of bullets, buckshot, Because what I understand is that there was an individual who was shooting a shotgun multiple times right here on this sidewalk where I'm pointing. An individual who works here at this restaurant claimed to have come out, saw the gunman. The gunman saw him and he ran inside rather than risk, obviously, getting shot. That is a lot of evidence markers, for sure. It's not uncommon for a gunshot like a shotgun because obviously multiple pieces of, I forgot exactly what they call it. I'm not a gun person myself. Multiple pieces of pellets, will litter this entire area. I am surprised though that they're so focused on the scene if nobody was hit or injured. But this is obviously an area of concern for the city. And the Seattle Police Department in particular, who's had an emphasis patrol here in downtown at 3rd and Jackson, I believe, no, 3rd and Pike, where there was just a couple shootings over the last couple days, where at least I know one individual died. I don't really cover crime for the city of Seattle for any particular publications. I work for several, but I mostly cover general news and features. So I don't really cover a crime particularly, although I am familiar with the Seattle Police Department because they did cover protests for black or racial justice, Black Lives Matter, for over a year and a half, attending protests, several times a week. So law enforcement's familiar with me and I'm familiar with them. So the Seattle Police mobile precinct is now on the scene. This was stationed at 3rd and Pike. And now it's here at 1st and Marion. For those of you who don't know, we've had multiple incidences of gun violence here in the streets of downtown Seattle, and in Seattle in particular and across King County. And so the Seattle Police Department, seeking to cut down on gun violence, put their mobile unit at 3rd and Pike, which is not too particularly close to here. I would say maybe like 2.5 miles, maybe. I don't know. I'm terrible at guessing distance. Well, it's unclear if this was gang related or if it was just someone with mental health or other disturbance. It's unusual for an individual to shoot a shotgun, which, according to a witness, is what happened here. An individual ran up here and was shooting into the air or shooting at something multiple times with a shotgun, from my understanding. So we have many members of the Seattle Police Department leadership here at the moment, obviously concerned about this incident. It's unclear if the perpetrator of the crime is at large or not. Obviously, that would be of a concern if somebody is loose in the streets of Seattle with a shotgun. This is the mobile unit. They have just responded to the scene here in the streets of Seattle. Yeah, there's been a lot of gun violence here in the streets of Seattle lately. Obviously, the police have done what they can to rein that in. They've had a number of emphasis patrols. At 12th and Jackson, they had a mobile unit for a couple weeks, and they reined in a lot of crime. And then they moved that to 3rd and Pike in an effort to reduce crime there. I know at least one individual, maybe more, had been shot there. But I know more than that had been shot there, but I think one maybe had died. What's different about this situation, though, is that an individual had a shotgun. There's been a lot of, shootings. I've covered some of that myself. You can see some of those instances on my Instagram. But it's really unusual for a shotgun, here in the streets of Seattle. There are many individuals with, pistols, with, those kind of weapons, but not shotguns, usually. That's what's unique about this situation. For those of you who know, we're currently at Marion and First, next to the Seattle Federal Building. There was an individual who apparently ran up the street. That's what I'm hearing from witnesses. Shot with a shotgun multiple times in the air. A witness working at this restaurant came out to see what was going on, and apparently the perpetrator, who was standing over here, saw him. He ran back into the restaurant and for safety reasons, and did not know exactly what happened after that. Now, there is a car here, which I believe may belong to an Uber driver. I'm not sure. I haven't verified that. Apparently he saw what happened. And be careful not to show his license plate, just for his privacy. And obviously this is an ongoing active situation. So I normally don't cover gun violence or crime in Seattle. I'm a news and features writer. I literally was at my office writing an article about the Girl Scouts, believe it or not. But when I went outside to take a break and get a snack at the 7-Eleven, and then I heard multiple gunshots as I was exiting the 7-Eleven, and so I approached this area. People were running the other way, as you can imagine, warning me not to approach this area. But as a journalist, we kind of have this instinct. I think we have David on the line. David?
Yeah, I'm here, Renee. Wow. You just happened to catch me popping on for something unrelated, and this popped up on my FYP. So what's the scoop?
Well, David, you won't believe it. I was actually at the Pioneer Building writing an article about the Girl Scouts, believe it or not, when I decided to take a break. And as you can see, my food over there, I went to the 7-Eleven here in Pioneer Square, to pick up some items. And as I was coming out, heard multiple gunshots. I went towards the scene, which now we're at First and Marion, next to the Federal Building. And people were running the other way, telling me that there was an active shooter. But that instinct as a journalist to run towards the situation, you've had it yourself. We covered the protests here in Seattle for well over a year and a half. So we're very familiar with the Seattle law enforcement, Seattle Police Department. And so I, approached the situation. Luckily, obviously, the active shooting situation was over. It's unclear if the individual who, according to witnesses, was shooting a shotgun right here on the sidewalk into the air or at a building, I'm not sure. But he shot the shotgun multiple times, which I find really unusual for the streets of Seattle, because most of it is other kind of firearms, and you're more familiar with that than I am.
Yep.
There are multiple, as you can see here, multiple markers for evidence. Police are obviously very interested in. It's unclear if the perpetrator of this crime has been, caught, subdued, or if he's still at large. And if that's the situation, obviously the people of Seattle would be very concerned.
So this just happened.
This literally just happened. I see leadership and law enforcement here at the scene. They've been conferring with the officers who first responded. There was more than 30 patrol cars who responded to this area. They've cordoned off several blocks with their patrol vehicles. At this time, many of those vehicles have left, as have Seattle Fire Department. What I overheard, I believe I heard, is that nobody was injured in this incident, which is great because, as you know, David, there's been a lot of gun violence here in Seattle, and several people have lost their lives of late.
So what intersection are we at?
We're at Marion and First.
Okay, so we're
sort of in the Pioneer Square area.
Okay, so yeah, for people who aren't familiar with Seattle, Marion and First is downtown. It is just north of Pioneer Square.
Yeah, and this is the Federal Building here. It's unclear if this incident was related to any business at the Federal Building. It would be unlikely at this late hour, I would imagine.
Renee, do you know anything about this Mini Cooper that's cordoned off and is just there, this car that's just to your left of frame. We could just see the front
Yes,
clip of it.
I'm glad you brought that up. I do believe that this car was related to some kind of a Uber or Lyft driver, and he witnessed what happened, but I'm not sure 100%. At this time, it might just be evidence, so maybe they're keeping it there.
Oh, is that one of our favorite lieutenants that's got his back turned to you?
I wouldn't be surprised. I don't recognize them at the moment.
If people listening were wondering if there was a little hint of sarcasm in my voice, yes, there was.
Yes, and just for disclosure, I am suing the city of Seattle because of injuries I sustained during covering protests for Black Lives in Seattle. So I have no ill will, but just for full disclosure.
Renee, can you go ahead and re-summarize what's going on? And actually, before you jump on that, everybody, you're on Renee Raketty. This is her account. She is one of our field producers at Malcontent News. I just happen to be on TikTok. This is all synchronicity that we're covering this live. Renee, can you go ahead and explain, because you get tons of people are popping on going, what happened? What happened? What happened?
Absolutely. For those of you who are just tuning in, I was at my office writing an article and took a break. I went to the local 7-Eleven, got some snacks, and then I heard multiple gunshots. I ran towards the situation like an idiot because I'm a journalist and that's what we do. But people were running away and saying there was an active shooter. About 30 patrol cars were swarming this area at the moment. I actually am in the cordoned off police area. Then police are rushing the situation. They actually hadn't set up this police tape just yet. And we're looking for evidence. As you can see, there are multiple markers here of evidence that police are now looking at. From a witness at the scene, what I heard was there was an individual with a shotgun who was running up this hill and, shooting multiple shots either into the air or at buildings. It's unclear. An individual who works at this restaurant right here, believe it or not, came out to investigate.
What restaurant?
Good question. Bar Tiglio, a pizzeria. And this, bar was packed because people who don't know, this is a very popular area on the weekends. It's Saturday night. And so many of those individuals, obviously fearing for their lives, once the violence has subdued, left the building. The establishment is actually closed early because of concerns for the safety of their staff. And obviously a lot of staff have been rattled by multiple gunshots next to their place of work. And so one of the witnesses, actually one of the staff here, saw the gunman, over here shooting. The gunman saw him, and obviously fearing for his safety, he ran back inside. So, this vehicle may actually be stranded. I see someone trying to repair the vehicle. It looks like a Mini Cooper.
Yeah, I'm wondering if it got hit, and that's what the issue is.
Oh, perhaps. There was a large Seattle Fire Department response, and medics were on the scene. It appeared that they were providing aid, but they weren't here long. Maybe they were here about like 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Then they left. Now they may have left with an individual on their way to Harborview. You're familiar with that establishment. You can probably talk more about that. It's our trauma center.
Yeah. So for people who are asking, as I see, like, where is this? Renee is at Marion and First in downtown Seattle. If you're somewhat familiar with the geography of Seattle, this is just north of Pioneer Square. It is by the Federal Building. This area, this part of Seattle, is generally what you would call an empty core. What I mean by that, not a lot of residential area here. This is a commerce and office building. And again, the building that she's looking at right now is the Federal Building. That person on the ground, not injured, we're not showing anything graphic. I want to be really clear to anybody that's watching the stream. That Mini Cooper there appears to be disabled. We don't know if that's disabled because the vehicle itself was struck in this incident, or if it just happened to break down there. Harborview Medical Center is a level 1 trauma center. It's the only one in Washington State. It serves Washington, Alaska, parts of Oregon, Idaho, and a little sliver of western Montana.
Correct, David. And like I said, they have cordoned off several blocks of downtown Seattle in this area. They are marking several pieces of evidence. I may have overheard, senior Seattle Police Department officials here on the scene. They may have said that nobody was injured. It's unclear. But there has been multiple shootings in the city of Seattle. There's been a rise in gun violence in King County. So it's very possible that, this is a big concern for the Seattle Police Department, obviously. You see the mobile unit right here, the mobile precinct. This was at 12th and Jackson just a couple weeks ago, and they moved this to 3rd and Pike because of a couple shootings over the last couple weeks. I believe one person was injured. Maybe, Dave, you have more information on that.
I don't have more information on that particular one, but one thing is somebody who's lived here for 21 years and has reported on the news here for 5 years, going on, God, I can't believe it's 6 years, going on 6 years. Seattle police have played whack-a-mole for all of the 21 years that I've been here in what you would call trouble spots or hot spots in the city. And that's what we're seeing right now. So for people who are familiar with Seattle, they set up a mobile precinct in what's called the International District. The International District would be south and east from where this is now. Generally just what happens is that the hot spot, the trouble spot just moves to another part of the city. So then the city moves resources to that part of the city, and then the hot spot or trouble. And this has gone on for all of the 21 years that I have been here.
Correct, David. I think that's a great succinct explanation for those that are tuning in from around the world. For those that don't know, I'm actually in a cordoned off area, but as a member of the press, I've been given some leeway by members of law enforcement here on the scene. There are currently no other reporters here, or if they are, they're outside of the cordoned off area.
Renee, I've tweeted this out on our news channel and referenced your TikTok channel.
Well, thank you so much, David.
Yeah, I don't know how many eyeballs that'll get, but I did. We have a bunch of people asking for another recap. It's just like streaming in the real world.
Well, David has a lot more experience about this than I do. I literally had never streamed on TikTok before. This was my first experience, but I just happened to be in the right place. Unfortunately, the wrong situation. But I happened to be here at the moment that it happened, and obviously, I wanted to share this with the Malcontent audience and also members of my TikTok who follow me. So you can see that the area is still cordoned off, literally. You can see the police tape down here. They're not letting anybody in, including our reporters. It looks like there is one video crew down the street who have just set up and are about to go live. They might be taking down police tape, it's unclear.
Sergeant Development, Seattle Police. Right now, we have expanded the area of control this investigation to be down there outside of that tape where you see the media cameras. So I'm going to need you to exit our crime scene, please.
Thank you very much. Nice talking to you.
Can you ask them if there's a PIO? Can you ask them if there's a PIO?
Yeah, is there
Renee?
Police former officer? Is there a PIO on the scene?
There is.
Okay. Will they be meeting the press down there?
They will be meeting the press down there.
Okay. Thank you very
Wonderful.
much.
Thank you, officer.
Yes, I am.
No, who are you with? So I can...
Well, I'm with many different news organizations, but right now I'm with Malcontent News.
With what?
Malcontent News at the moment.
Malcontent News. Okay. It's Sergeant Huserick is on scene, and he's going to probably address the media down there. That's where he's going to do it. And I'll let him know that you're here.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
As you can see, this is the food I got at 7-Eleven. And like an idiot, I ran towards the scene as people were running away from it.
This is in Seattle, y'all. People are asking what this is. This is in Seattle. To the best of our knowledge, nobody has been wounded. Renee, go ahead and recap the story again.
Yeah, hold on. Let me get to.
Yeah, you know what, Renee, when you're packing your stuff up and you're moving, I will do my best job to recap everything you've said. Hello, everybody. Renee Raketty is the person doing the streaming. She works for a number of news organizations. She's representing Malcontent News at the moment. We're based out of Seattle. What happened is just a few moments ago, Renee literally just happened to be right there. It happened in front of her. An individual popped out of a restaurant. There was some kind of confrontation. They were armed. And they started, this is at First and Marion in downtown Seattle. They started to proceed eastbound on Marion, adjacent to the federal building. They fired several shots from a shotgun. We don't know the number or count. There were multiple, there's no way for us to rewind, unfortunately, on TikTok. There were multiple for the crime scene indicators on where there are either casings or shotgun shells, or because she's being told it's a shotgun. She didn't see it was.
Yeah.
But it doesn't appear that anybody
God,
was
hey,
injured.
Jimmy.
They've expanded the size of the crime scene, so they've asked Renee to step back and join the media pool, and that's what we're doing right now.
Yeah, I'm live right now.
And Renee, poor Renee's just trying to eat her dinner.
Yeah, exactly. There's my snacks. As I stated earlier, I was writing an article nearby at my office unrelated to this incident. And unfortunately, as I was exiting the 7-Eleven, I heard multiple gunshots and people were running away from this corner at First and Marion. But kind of as most journalists do, we run towards, scenes of a crime to get the story, which is what I did. When I got here, police were just arriving. There was about 30 patrol cars swarming this multiple block area that they had cordoned off. I found myself actually in the crime scene because I was the first journalist here on the scene. And so what I heard a witness say is that a man had a gunshot fired into the air multiple times. An individual at the pizzeria came out, a staff member, and saw this individual. This individual, knowing that the shooter had seen him, went back in the restaurant. And officers began to swarm the area. It's unclear if the individual who did the shooting is at large or whether or not he's been detained. There are multiple pieces of gunshot. I believe they're called pellets, all over the scene. Police at the scene have tagged a lot of that evidence. Obviously, they plan to take pictures and methodically document what happened here. It is obviously very concerning that an individual would be carrying a shotgun here in downtown Seattle next to the federal building, just, near Pioneer Square.
And just so our audience knows, if you're not from Washington State, if you're not 2A friendly, Washington State is an open carry state. A lot of people, especially if you're not from Washington, if you consume certain flavored news, you have the wrong impression on how, I'm doing air quotes, how liberal Washington State is. Certainly when it comes to firearms, Washington State is not all that liberal.
Correct.
Or depending how you use the word liberal, I guess. I guess some people would say it is very liberal.
For sure, definitely. Because there has been a rise in gun violence here in the streets of Seattle. Officers had actually been trying to, clamp down on the crime happening here by setting up a mobile precinct at 12th and Jackson for several weeks. They did do many investigations and did file charges against many individuals for petty crimes. However, there had been a number of shootings here at 3rd and Pike. I believe one individual may have died, I'm not sure, but don't quote me on that. And so the mobile unit that you see there, the blue bus basically, was set up at 3rd and Pike, and police were doing an emphasis patrol in that area, trying to stop the violence. It is interesting that I heard that nobody was injured or killed, but I do see a lot of police response for someone, for a situation that had no injuries. So
yeah, for those of you, go ahead, Renee, go ahead.
So that is an interesting development for sure.
Yeah, for those of you who are saying, we're under the impression that actually nobody has been wounded in this, but We are waiting to hear from the PIO, which a public information officer, if you're not familiar with that lingo. Seattle Police knows that our reporter is on the scene. Renee is known, and there are other journalists around with there. She's with the media pool right now, and we're waiting to hear from the PIO to get the details. But at the moment, from eyewitness reports, it does not sound like anybody was wounded. And as Renee noted earlier, Seattle Fire Department left the scene. There's no ambulance there. There's no further criminal investigation going on, not anything that would imply that anybody was wounded or I'm saying, using this term, just keep it TikTok friendly, unalived.
Correct. And because I'm live, I haven't had a chance to check the Seattle Police Department blotter or their Twitter account, which is normally something I would do in this kind of situation.
Renee, do you have any moderators? Because I'm feeling like you need some moderators in the chat. I think this is your first one. You probably don't have any moderators assigned.
No, I don't. I only have one moderator, but I don't believe he's online at the moment.
Well, you can go ahead and promote me to moderator, and I'll start taking care of it.
Yes, I'll try.
Or either that, or you all need to start behaving in the comments.
For sure. We don't want to
I
get
do
flagged by
like using
TikTok.
the band hammer.
For sure.
You can Muscles and Nursing. I will vouch for him, Renee. Muscles and Nursing. If you can go ahead and promote Muscles and Nursing, absolutely vouch for him.
I've added you. And we don't want to get blocked by TikTok.
Yeah, that's why. That's the main reason.
Okay, Muscles and Nursing is not showing up. Let me look for their comment.
Yeah. Probably going to scroll up about 20, 25 comments.
Oh, there they are. Okay. Okay, Muscles and Nursing is now a moderator. Thank both of you for moderating for me.
Seattle has never been safe if anyone knows their history. I wouldn't call Seattle an unsafe city. But yes, the rate of violent crime in Seattle is definitely up, but it is nowhere near historic highs for Seattle. These areas, again, I've lived in this area for 21 years. These areas have all been hot spots and trouble spots to varying degrees. It looks like we might be getting a PIO briefing.
I'll check in with everybody a little quick, because we're just still collecting. I'm still collecting information. I'm waiting for Patrick to get here. Finish stuff here. So everybody needs anything. What's that? One panel. Like I said, I'm still confirming everything here. So.
Okay, we have unconfirmed reports of one fatal.
One fatal.
I would say it's probably going to be at least a half hour.
We have multiple reporters here on the scene.
So we have breaking news then. Renee, go ahead and just tell us what you heard.
What I heard a member of the Seattle Police Department leadership say is that a PIO officer will be coming here shortly. But a reporter asked the individual if there had been a fatality. They said, is it confirmed there is one fatality? And the individual here at Seattle Police Department leadership said they cannot confirm that at the moment. They're still investigating. So that is a new development. What shocks me, David, is how close I came to potentially have been a victim of this situation. So I got very lucky that I wasn't involved in any way. As I mentioned earlier, David, I was the first reporter here on the scene. I actually ended up being in the crime scene because I went towards the shooting as people were running away from it. So just to recap for folks who are just tuning in, we're at the corner of First and Marion near the Federal Building, just north of Pioneer Square, which is a neighborhood here in Seattle. There has been a rise in gun violence here in the city of Seattle, as well as King County. And the Seattle Police Department had established a couple mobile units to try and sort of clamp down on crime here in the city. In fact, they had a unit at 3rd and Third and Pike, where there had been multiple shootings over the last couple weeks. It's unclear to me if someone had died from those shootings, but perhaps someone did die tonight. We don't know. We're waiting on that from the public information officer. We're currently awaiting that news. So if so, that individual would have been taken to Harborview Medical Center, which is not far from actually downtown Seattle, which is our trauma care center in this region. They have the best doctors. Anyone who would have been shot would have gotten the best care possible. But obviously, as you know, with shotguns, if this was a shotgun shooting, as a witness claimed, then clearly, that kind of injury would do extensive damage to your body. David, has some experience with trauma care, is more familiar with this than I am.
Yeah, I'm looking to see. Okay, this is what we've got from SPD off of their official Twitter feed. Officers responded to a report of shots fired at the 100 block of Marion, which is 1st and Marion. At least one officer fired at a possible suspect. That's the words. That's the exact words. Possible suspect. Details are still coming in and will be clarified as we get them.
What I wonder, David, is if this officer was assigned to the federal building, because as you know, there are many federal units and there is a federal protective service that does protect federal buildings.
Yeah, and this was right adjacent to the federal building. If you look at kind of just the situation of this weekend, I'm not implying in any way this is related to the truckers convoy. I'm just saying that alert level is probably going to be a little higher at federal facilities this weekend than others. That's all, and that's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, we have a lot of reporters on the scene, as you can see. I just happened to be the first reporter on the scene because I was here when this incident occurred. Luckily, I wasn't involved, obviously, in the shooting, and I got here just after. Potentially one individual had been subdued. When I got here, I did not see anyone, but I did see medical care. It looked like medics were near the federal building where that, gate goes down and federal, employee cars enter. These are the kind of cars they would see with the FBI or ATF or one of those places where they keep their cars under the building. And that's where, the markers are where police are collecting evidence. So it's possible that a member of,
I've got a video of the incident. Obviously, we can't show it, but I can play the audio track.
Yes, please.
So let me go ahead and move my device. We'll go ahead and play the audio track. Actually, you know what? Before I put it on the air, I want to screen it first.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let me go ahead. Not a good idea. Let me screen it first. We may not put it on the air. Give me a second.
Let me see if Jimmy is still on the scene. Jimmy is one of the best photojournalists here in Seattle. I don't see him at the moment. Hold on. No, I don't see him. He obviously is getting shots of the incident. He was here behind this police line when I came out from the crime scene. And, he listens to the scanner quite religiously. Being someone who's more of a news and features general assignment writer, I don't normally listen to the scanner that often, except, when I was covering the protests for racial justice, Black Lives Matter, that were here in Seattle for over a year and a half. Go ahead, David.
Okay, so let me describe to you, again, we're not going to show the video because we don't want issues with TikTok. The video does not show anything graphic. We just don't want any issues with TikTok. And if I were to show the video, you're only going to see it in a postage stamp. So I'm going to describe what's in the video, and then I'm going to play the audio track so that you can hear it. And so the video is 15 seconds long. The video is shot from above 1st and Marion, from maybe about the 8th to 10th floor. It is looking down at that intersection. What you see in the video are multiple Seattle Police Department cruisers are on scene. I see 4 Seattle police officers who are walking down in the sidewalk. They are not walking in the direction of gunfire. They are walking in a different direction. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and play this 15-second clip.
Yep. So if I have,
And I'll go ahead and let it play one more time.
Can you move the mic closer?
You want me to roll it one more time, Renee?
One more time.
It's a little hard
Wow.
to tell with the echoes, but it sounds like 8 to 10 distinct shots is what I'm hearing.
Does it sound like gunshots to you, David?
Yeah, absolutely. And
Okay.
that's not that wouldn't be shotgun. And certainly wouldn't fire that rapidly. Again,
Yeah,
because
that'd be consistent with what I heard.
this report that an officer returned fire. And what I'm seeing in that video is there are multiple police vehicles that are on the scene. Then we're hearing that fire. So I'm speculating, and I want to stress that to everybody because we're trying to piece together what's going on here in real time. This video that is up seems to me to indicate that police did engage with somebody, because Seattle police on their own Twitter feed are saying possible suspect. That is their quote unquote exact words.
Wow. Now, as you probably can't tell, there are cement buildings, there are masonry, there is, looks like marble on the side of these buildings. So what may have heard like just, distinct gunshots to you in the video would sound to me like much louder. It'd be bouncing off multiple buildings as I'm approaching the scene. Looks like Seattle Police Department.
It is super echoey.
Yeah, there's another vehicle approaching the scene with the Seattle Police Department. It's the CSI unit. So the CSI unit is now on the scene.
That's going to point more to a more serious situation.
Absolutely. So that report of a fatality may be, unfortunately, true. And someone may have died here tonight. Obviously, we don't know the situation. We don't know what this individual was doing. We don't know whether or not the shooting, if it was done by the Seattle Police Department or other members of law enforcement, were justified. All of that is breaking information. We do not have the details yet of what exactly happened here tonight. We will have a PIO, a public information officer, on the scene very shortly. We hope to get those details to you.
Yeah, to
David is in the
recap,
studio.
Yeah, to recap, it is beginning to look like this is a officer involved shooting in downtown Seattle. There is reports on the Seattle Twitter feed, and Renee was just reporting CSI is there. It looks like another investigative vehicle is just pulled up. So this situation is rapidly evolving from when Renee initially started her stream.
Absolutely. As I said, I was exiting a 7-Eleven when I heard multiple gunshots. I ran towards the situation as people were running away, saying that there was an active shooter. Probably a lot of people didn't know who was who at the moment, whether they were law enforcement or whether they were the shooter. There obviously was a lot of alarm in the public. People were crouched behind buildings. They were seeking cover. As I mentioned, an individual who works at the local pizzeria saw the shooter and ran inside. And that establishment closed early because many of the patrons were very alarmed by what they had just heard or what they may have witnessed.
I'm just seeing if there's any additional information, and I'm not seeing anything.
Someone's reporting an officer involved shooting at First Marion. Yeah, correct. It appears that's what's happening. We're still getting reports by the minute from the internet. And we are expecting a PO to come here shortly to give us the details of what, happened from their perspective. If this was an officer-involved shooting, we can't imagine that we will get a video evidence, if there is any, from body-worn footage shortly. Here in Seattle, they do a pretty good job of releasing that within like 24, 48 hours. As I mentioned, I'm not normally a crime reporter. This is not my area of expertise. But I did cover the protests for racial justice here in Seattle for over a year and a half. So law enforcement is familiar with me, which allowed me to be so close to the scene as it was unfolding.
Renee, I'm just checking on the socials to see if we could find anything else.
For those of
Again,
you who
because
don't
we
know,
were able
David
to
is
find
in
that.
the studio. David
We
is
were
in the
able to
studio of
find this one
Malcontent
clip.
News while I'm here on the scene. I was the first reporter to respond to the shooting and began covering it live here on TikTok. For those of you who don't know, this is my first TikTok. So David is an expert, a veteran of TikTok. In fact, congratulations, David, on reaching over, what is it, 100,000 people?
We're like almost to 125,000. We're adding like 15 to 20,000 people a day right now. It's crazy.
Oh my gosh.
Absolutely crazy. People are discovering our coverage and the work that we do. Amazing. People like honest reporting, truth, and just, no spin, no politics, no. When I say no politics, like I'm going to tell you what to think. Amazing. People just want facts. Who'd have thought?
Great. We do have a request to mod. Are you familiar with, let's see, Jesus Jess Machina?
I don't think so.
Okay, but thank you for offering. The mods on David's channel are actually staff of Malcontent News, including myself, members of the research team and the editorial.
Renee, let me do this. I'm going to go ahead and ping the team and see if we can get somebody to mod on, see if we can get some more.
Yeah, it's individuals that I'm familiar with. I'd appreciate that.
Yep.
I know this is probably like, I've been early to a scene where I'm one of the, second or third reporters, but I've never been the first person on a scene like this, where apparently it might be an officer-involved shooting. We're still waiting to hear from a police information officer.
Renee, if you can go ahead and recap and like who you are, where you're at, what's going on again, because there's tons of people asking the questions.
Absolutely. My name is Renee Raketty. I'm a journalist here in Seattle. I work for a number of news outlets, including Malcontent News. I'm actually a field producer for Malcontent News. Many of you may remember me if you follow David from the protests for racial justice, Black Lives Matter that happened here in Seattle. Both of us covered those events for over a year and a half. I was there multiple times during the week, covered multiple events. I was actually injured in the protests. You may have heard about that. And I'm actually suing the city of Seattle. Obviously, that has no bearing on the reporting I'm providing today. But just for, just to make things clear, full disclosure. But what happened was I was actually writing an article in my office nearby. Left the 7-Eleven, I heard multiple gunshots. As people were running away, reporting an active shooter, I ran towards the scene. I actually brought my snacks with me. It ended up being right there where the shooting may have occurred, at first in Marion, near the federal building here in Seattle. The Seattle police have cordoned off and tagged several pieces of evidence next to the federal building. So it's obviously something they're interested in. I heard from a witness who works in this restaurant, the pizzeria, that he emerged from the pizzeria after hearing the gunshots to find out what was happening here. And he actually saw the shooter, went back inside fearing for his safety. Obviously, all the patrons of the restaurant, and this is a very busy restaurant because it is a Saturday night here in Seattle, stayed there locked down. But once the police responded, and like I said, when I was here, I saw probably 30 patrol officers swarming this area, patrol units, swarming all around me. I was here before they even cordoned off that intersection. And what I heard from that witness is that, he saw the shooter. What I didn't know at the time and what I had thought I heard is that perhaps like nobody was injured, but I did see members of the Seattle Fire Department and medics here. It looks like they may have been rendering aid to somebody. What we are hearing now in unconfirmed reports from other journalists on the scene is that one individual may have died. So obviously, if that is true, that's a tragic development here in the city of Seattle.
Renee, you can make Epi Lady. She just popped up. Make her a mod. And generally, Booty, as in Booty, just commented. That is Rebecca on our team. And if you can make Epi_Lady and General Booty, they could be your mods.
Okay, great. I got it. Thank you, David.
Yep.
For those of you who know, David is a fantastic journalist. He's also on TikTok, but he also has a news website, malcontentnews.com. He also has live streams on Twitch, on Facebook, on all the media platforms. But on TikTok, he has over 100,000 followers. He said just 125,000 at this point. But definitely go check him out if you haven't already. I assume most of the people watching this live are actually from David's TikTok. So thank you and welcome to my TikTok. This is my first TikTok. So, feel free to like and follow if you want to. David, we've been there. We've covered these protests. The adrenaline. We run towards the story. And that's what I did here tonight.
Yeah. So to recap, because I see lots of people that are commenting, and we are getting some more mods in here. So the hammer's going to be coming down in a little bit. I'm seeing the comments on can people stop spamming? It's coming. Let me give you a quick recap of what was going on. Renee Raketty, our field producer, she works for a number of news organizations. She's a field producer for Malcontent News, was literally just eating some dinner. That's it. And this incident unfolded almost right in front of her. There were witnesses say that they saw an individual who had a shotgun. They fired multiple rounds. This happened at the intersection of First and Marion in Seattle. The individual moved east up Marion. If you're familiar with downtown, First, you're kind of at the bottom of the hill. It goes up very steeply. So this is by the federal building. We have a video clip. I will go back and play that video clip in a couple of minutes. There is approximately 8 to 10 shots fired. According to the Seattle Police Department Twitter feed, about an hour ago, they potentially engaged with a quote unquote possible suspect. That is the exact words on the Twitter feed, which I know is a little weird because it's like, why would you just be shooting at someone that's possibly somebody? So it's all a little hazy right now. There was a sergeant that came and talked very briefly to the media pool that Renee is now with. One of the other people in the media pool asked if there were any fatalities. The officer said there was, and then walked it back a little bit and said unconfirmed, because that would come from the PIO. And that is the sum total of what we know right now.
Yeah, shockingly enough, I ended up in the middle of the crime scene, and that officer had to escort me out of the crime area. The crime scene area, you can see it's cordoned off with police tape here.
Renee, I'm going to go ahead and play that. I'm going to play that clip again that we have.
Please do.
So I don't know how much you could see the little postage stamp on my feed, but you could see that SPD was already on the scene. You could see there's a group of officers walking right there. So we are speculating that what that video was showing, what we're hearing in that video is a potentially officer involved shooting, but we don't know.
Correct. We're still waiting on the PAO to give us a full update. we're expecting his full update in just a minute. So literally my snacks are now cold. My beverage is actually now melted. There is no ice left. What an awkward
Renee, when we
situation to
got,
find yourself in the middle of a shooting. I really feel for the victims.
I even have like the wrong background going here because like none of this was planned. Give me a minute. I'm like,
Yeah,
oh,
absolutely.
we have the Ukraine war background running in the studio here. It's like, that's not the right one.
No, that's definitely not the streets of Seattle. Shooting, basically gun violence is definitely up in the city. It's up across King County. There's been a couple, publicly known deaths that have occurred over the last couple of weeks here in the streets of Seattle, but it's definitely not as bad as a war zone. Of course, depending on your perspective, tonight, several shots were fired here at First and Marion. And it certainly felt like a war zone. I was telling David that even though he hears distinct gunshots, the gunshots were echoing off, marble, echoing off cement, echoing off, different facades of buildings. And so to me, it sounded much more substantial. Now, just to recap,
it's it's very hard in that audio clip, right? Because we're going to presume it's off somebody's phone, so that's not the greatest microphone. There's a lot of echo, but it does sound like pretty big caliber or whatever it was. This doesn't sound like a 22 or a 38.
Yeah, it didn't sound like that to me. And again, David, you're more familiar with weapons than I am. Not familiar with guns as much as you are. So, for me, it sounded substantial.
And that's what a lot of people are, and that's what a lot of people are social media are saying. They're saying like, this was some boom.
Exactly. We're still waiting on the details of the crime. We don't know yet what happened. It's too early to say whether or not the shooting was justified. We don't know what the perpetrator was doing at the time that he or she may have been shot. We don't know exactly who died or exactly how it happened. We're expecting to hear that shortly.
Yeah, I'm seeing lots of people asking for the link. Unfortunately, in some time zones on the planet, we are just a short time away from it becoming a 7th of March. And you're like, well, why does that even matter? Because the new TikTok guidelines for content go into effect at that time. And you can get in trouble, unfortunately, for pointing people to external links. Hey, Renee, the very interesting things that were going on Twitter today. People were seeing on Twitter there was lots less misinformation from Russia on Twitter today. Very, very fascinating story on Twitter today about that, about how a lot less Russian misinformation on Twitter.
Wow. Tell me more about it, please.
I know.
Well, that's good. We need more less misinformation. People don't realize that Ukraine is up against, decades and decades of, secrets and, different varying secret agencies. I know in Moscow and in Russia, there are multiple secret agencies. Working to spread misinformation, to conceal information, So it's really great that we're finally getting less misinformation and more accurate information out there in the streets.
It's funny. Some people got the hint and some people didn't. So in the comments, and I'm amused by that. Yes, there are new Twitter, new terms of service for TikTok that, again, in some time zones in the planet are going into effect in about 2 hours. And so at that point, I know that I'm personally going to start operating under those guidelines. Our news channel is going to start operating under those guidelines. And one of those things is promoting external links. That's something you can get zinged for. So just be aware. If you're not aware that there's new terms of service, especially if you're a creator, I know that we're segueing from what we're covering here. You should really read and understand what's in those new terms of service. And personally, I would advise all creators Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, like Sunday and through all of next week, I'd be kind of careful what you're posting, because every time they mess with the algorithm and every time they mess with what's okay and what's not, it just kind of becomes chaos. So to recap real quick, people are asking, this is live. This is in Seattle. There was an incident at First and Marion. First and Marion is in downtown Seattle. It is just north of Pioneer Square. Downtown Seattle is an empty core. What I mean by an empty core is there is not a lot of residential people, not a lot of residential buildings. These are mostly office buildings in this area. Now, Renee has been made to move further south, and there's some more residential where she is. So First and Marion is like right on the edge of all of these office buildings and federal buildings. And an individual apparently came out of a restaurant. There was some kind of confrontation. They were armed.
Well, it's unclear if they came out of the restaurant or if it happened next to the restaurant. My understanding is it may have happened next to the restaurant, and a staff member of this restaurant came out to see what was happening, but wasn't actually involved or didn't. The shooter did see them, and they ran back into the restaurant, but they may not have confronted the shooter. It's unclear at this time.
Thank you for that's really appreciated to clarify it, because getting this right is important to us. That individual started proceeding eastbound up Marion, so up the hill. They fired at, by eyewitness reports, what Renee was hearing on the ground, at nothing in particular. We then had a video, we've played it a few times, doesn't really show much of anything, but you could hear between 8 to 10 shots. And on the Twitter feed for the Seattle Police Department, what the Seattle Police Department is saying about an hour and 15 minutes ago, there is a possible officer involved shooting of their words, quote, possible suspect, unquote, related to this incident at First and Marion. We are not aware that there are any other victims. We are not aware. At this point, we don't really have any confirmation that anybody has been unalived or wounded in this. There was a sergeant who came over, talked to the media pool very briefly, everybody asking the same question, when's the PIO coming? And that officer was asked by another journalist, has anybody been unalived? That officer said yes, and then kind of looking at the body language, just kind of, I'm not supposed to say that, and kind of walked it back a little bit and said it's unconfirmed.
Correct. That was a great summation of what happened. Honestly, David, I'm a little, now that time has passed and my adrenaline is dying down, I'm beginning to get a little more nervous about what I witnessed tonight. For those of you who don't know, I was honestly in 7-Eleven. I was coming out of 7-Eleven after buying some snacks. And when I heard multiple gunshots, people were running towards me, talking about an active shooter. I ran towards the situation. As I went, I saw people ducking behind buildings. They appeared very fearful. I got to the corner of First and Marion, where it's clear that this was, the central crime scene. And cops were swarming the area. About 30 patrol vehicles were, from every direction, were coming to the area. I began to see officers going up Marion, towards the federal building, where there's that little gate, for those that know the Seattle Federal Building, where federal vehicles can come and go. There was a number of a number of officers who were looking with flashlights, looking for evidence, began to mark evidence of potential bullet fragments, or, it's unclear what the exact weapon was at this time, other than clearly it was some kind of, gunshot. To me, it was very substantial because the sound was bouncing off multiple buildings here in downtown Seattle. But David has played the audio. It's unclear what the caliber of the weapon was. Officers were on the scene. It looks like there may have been a confrontation. And we have not confirmed this yet, but perhaps someone did die in that interaction with law enforcement. We are expecting a police information officer to come to the scene, public information officer, any moment to give us an update on what's going on. This is interesting, David. Someone is leaving this building here in this cordoned off, section.
I mean, again, they utterly have no idea, right? They're probably pulling out and like, oh yeah, look
You
at
can
that.
see
Like,
the look on their face. They're like, how do I get out of here?
what do I do now?
They're actually
Yeah, I think
reversing and
I'm
going
going to
back into
punt.
the garage.
It looks like they've decided to punt.
Exactly. It looks like they're taking public transit tonight. Yeah, exactly. What's going on there?
I think I'm going to go back inside.
The officer said he did not expect the garage to open. Obviously, he's going to try and assist this individual and leaving the building. In fact, he was waving them forward. He's going to help them leave this crime scene. Honestly, David, I ended up being, right there in the middle of this cordon off area, in the middle, where all the action was happening. Only, several seconds, or maybe a minute, I don't know, behind the actual shooting. So clearly I could have been involved in this situation.
Well, Renee, you're doing a great job out there in the field.
Luckily, I approached very cautiously. But yeah, judging from the fear on people's face, this was a substantial incident that occurred here tonight.
I'm just checking the Twitter feed from SPD. I'm seeing if we have any
exactly.
additional information, and we don't.
I would ask the officer if he can confirm that someone did die here tonight. But a lot of times, they know not to say anything. They're going to wait for the public information officer to make that disclosure, to talk about exactly what happened, sort of the sequence of events, the timeline of events tonight, and perhaps when law enforcement encountered the shooter and how they may have subdued the shooter. Those details are unclear right now. David has reported on information on Twitter and information on perhaps the Seattle police officer blog. And so he's there in the studio.
Yeah, Renee, I'm going to go ahead and mute again. We've got another video. I want to vet it first.
Okay, great. Thank you, David. I also want to thank the Malcontent team. For those of you who don't know, many of David's mods are Malcontent News staff or, are part of the research team or other members of the editorial. And they're helping me to mod here tonight. So thank you very much to them. I'm very thankful to David and his team for joining me tonight. This was actually my first TikTok. And so, exactly, I just happened to be here on this potentially unfortunate scene, just, a block and a half from where the shooting occurred. I was the first reporter here, at the scene of the shooting. And so I'm bringing it to you all live. And as you can tell, as we learn more information, we're able to narrow down exactly what happened here tonight. Literally, when I arrived, I knew nothing other than people were running from that location at first to Marion. And there was a great deal of fear in their eyes. People were ducking behind buildings. I approached cautiously, but luckily, I was safe.
Renee, we've got another video. I've gone ahead and vetted it.
Thank you.
This is a video that is essentially of the same moment. The first video that I was sharing is 15 seconds long. This one is 16 seconds long. They are almost in perfect sync with each other from start time to end time. This one is at street level, and we can hear the number of shots more clearly. I just want to be clear for TikTok content, blah, blah, blah. There's nothing being shown here. This is it's all audio and some police cars. That's it. I'm going to go ahead and roll the clip. I'm going ahead and let it replay.
All right, so 15 seconds. 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 15
So that was
Sure.
approximately an hour and 15 minutes ago.
Doesn't it seem interesting to you, David, that officers were able to respond so quickly as if they were looking for this potential shooter?
Yeah, there's multiple reports on social media. Like there was one person that posted, it took 20 minutes for Seattle police to get there. This, the typical misinformation stuff. And they're absolutely getting roasted on the Seattle police feed, that they were there within just a couple of minutes. And we have a lot of videos that are showing and confirming that.
We have reporters going live. Like I said, I was at First and Marion, got pushed back by a member of law enforcement to my current location, where members of the press are waiting to be briefed by a public information officer.
Yeah, so for everybody that's watching, we're waiting to hear from the public information officer to understand, we know, we've told you the sum total of everything that we know, and that's where we're at.
Exactly. For those of you here at the beginning, you know exactly what happened, and that is basically I was leaving a 7-Eleven about a block and a half from First and Marion with my, as you can see, my snacks. I was working on an article at my office and came out just to get some dinner, and I heard gunshots. I, went towards the scene at First and Marion as people were running the other way, people yelling at me there was an active shooter to take cover. When I got here, police officers were swarming the area. Officers were further up Marion, as was members of the Seattle Fire Department began to arrive, perhaps provide aid to an individual who may or may not have perished here tonight. I did see the officers looking for signs of bullet fragments or other evidence, and they began to mark that evidence as I was here on the corner. I did hear an individual who worked at the pizzeria tell law enforcement that he came out, saw the individual shooting. The individual saw him, and he ran back into the restaurant for his own safety. At that point, obviously, they, shuttered the establishment, and people, for their own safety, began to leave the pizzeria. It was a crowded, restaurant. It is Saturday night here in Seattle. First and Marion is, go ahead.
No, I'm seeing some people asking. Renee Raketty is a field producer for Malcontent News. She is one of the people that works. I see people asking if this is Malcontent News page. Renee Raketty is one of our field producers, and you should be following her.
Thank you. This is actually my first TikTok live. And I'm learning this platform. David is an expert at 100,000 plus. I believe he said he's at 125,000 at this point of you. And I'm grateful that he was able to join me tonight. I know many of you are from his page, and I'm really grateful that for you coming to see what's happening here at First and Marion. Obviously, the situation with gun violence in the city has reached new highs. And unfortunately, people over the last few weeks have died. We know that gun violence has increased here in Seattle as well as King County and other parts of the country as well. But there has been emphasis, patrols, in Seattle. There was a mobile precinct at 12th and Jackson related to a lot of crime that was happening there. After a couple weeks there, they moved to 3rd and Pike, where they had established a mobile unit, a mobile precinct. I believe that mobile precinct is here now because there is one here at First and Marion who arrived, long after I was here. And obviously they're investigating the situation. As David mentioned, we did have a PIO, or not a PIO, but a sergeant come over and mentioned that a PIO would be coming. And we would have heard, that potentially one of the reporters asked if someone had been shot and killed tonight. David just mentioned from what he found on Twitter that, there may have been an officer-involved shooting. David played multiple videos of the situation from different vantage points. Unfortunately, I didn't, obviously, well, gratefully, I wasn't here to capture the actual shooting. I was mentioning to David that the longer I've been here on the scene, which is now over an hour and a half, I believe, right?
I didn't even look at the time, right? Again, this is just synchronicity. You happened to catch me literally staring. I wasn't even looking. I was just, I literally came it on and your feed was on my FYP. That's the only reason I
Wow.
showed up here. I literally just
Wow.
pulled it out of my pocket because I was actually in the studio testing the mixing board that one of our malcontents donated into the studio. And I have it all dialed in. The audio is going to be amazing on our news channel on moving forward. That's a whole separate subject. I'm going to go ahead and read the tweet from the Seattle Police Department. This is from
Oh, we have the
8:31
police
p.m.
chief Diaz on the scene.
Who's on?
Well, the interim police chief Diaz is here.
Oh, Chief
He
Diaz
just
is
entered.
here.
Yeah, he just went under the police line. He's approaching First and Marion now. He's in full uniform.
I
He is,
wonder if we're going to get
running to
I wonder
be-
if we're going to get a statement from Chief Diaz along with the PIO.
You know, I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, especially if this is an officer-involved shooting. They're going to want to make sure that their messaging is on point. For those that don't know, he's in the lead. There's no other people running right now to be the actual police chief. So it appears that he's going to get the job. I mean, that's still early to know, but people have a mixed review of how he's been running the police department. Overall, I think my assessment is that he's done a decent job. I don't know if David, you want to comment on any of that?
It's kind of a loaded question. I will say this: Safe Seattle hates him. I mean, I think that's the appropriate word. Safe Seattle absolutely hates him. So I'm going to lean to probably he's probably going to be a better chief than the last few that we've had.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to get too political.
If you're not from Seattle, you're not going to understand. You're just not, and I'm not going to go into it. With that said, let me go back to reading that tweet.
Law enforcement.
Yeah, let me go back to reading that tweet because I have a feeling that Chief Diaz is on, that we're going to get that briefing soon. At 8:31 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, that's Seattle time, officer responding to a report of shots fired in the 100 block of Marion Street. At least one officer fired at and I quote, because this wording's a little unusual, quote, possible suspect, unquote. Details are still coming in and will be clarified as we get them. We have an unofficial report from a sergeant that was on the scene that there is one unalived. And before people roast me that I'm using the word unalived, I can't use the D word because the AI moderation, or the K word, because the online AI moderation of TikTok could give us a content strike and knock all of this off the air. We would prefer not to use Orwellian newspeak, but TikTok requires us to use Orwellian newspeak.
What have you heard?
Just the same thing, that like there's a shooting, somebody shooting a shotgun down here, and then they came down. That's like basically all I heard.
Yeah, I'm surprised you heard shotgun because that's what I heard from people fleeing the scene. For those of you who don't know, I'm with Jimmy. He's an excellent Seattle photojournalist. You can follow him on social media at Street Photojournalism, right?
Yeah.
Street Photojournalism on Instagram. What else?
That's pretty much. Yeah.
Follow him. You won't regret it.
Like seriously, if you're just even if you're not from Seattle, if you're just a news junkie and you like amazing photojournalism, you need to be following Jimmy. Jimmy does amazing work.
The best photojournalism in Seattle. We have some great folks, but we might be getting an update.
Who will? Hey, wait.
Renee, can you flip your camera because we can't really hear?
Oh, okay. I can try and get closer. Hold on.
I know. I'm just talking to my friends. Okay. I was on.
He's talking to Kyra.
You were somewhere.
Got it.
And,
Can I squeeze in instead of my camera here next to you? All right, I'll right behind you.
I think I heard there were so many people in dress uniforms because there was an event tonight.
I got one.
I have a light on the stand, if you want to use that. But I don't really-
I'm gonna have to fight the photojournalist here tonight. You know I don't have any problem doing that, David.
Say again, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to find updated information.
As I was telling your audience, I was the first reporter here on the scene. I just happened to be leaving my office where I was working on an article. I went to 7-Eleven to get some snacks. Okay. Heard multiple gunshots, and as folks were running away from the scene, I went to the scene. It's getting crowded in here, David, so it's going to be hard to get a good angle.
Okay.
No, that's fine. That's to be expected. The word is out. Renee, I'm going to go ahead and replay that video clip while we're waiting, since
good.
we have that on the ground here. Or are we getting ready?
And I think we have a couple. Yeah, we have.
Okay.
Okay, Chief Mahaffey. Yeah, he's being briefed right now. As I mentioned, Chief Diaz is here at the scene.
You know, it's a real high-tech way to do things.
I'm gonna have to push over some TV reporters to get close. I'm gonna have to start pushing some equipment or something.
Okay, just to let people know, on our feed, we have vetted this video. There is no violence or anything in this, but we do have a 16-second clip from the incident. I'm going to go ahead and roll that clip. Let's try that again. We're going to go ahead and play it one more time. And that clip appears to be looking at down on First, because it does not appear to be going up the hill.
Got it. Yeah. That's amazing that someone was able to capture the footage as the situation was unfolding. You almost wonder, like, you know, how could someone be in such a perfect position? That's great citizen journalism there.
Yeah, like people are commenting. And I get that. I get you could squint and go, technically an AR-15 is a 22. I get that, right? It's 5.56. Yeah, that's not. I mean, I will say this: that's not a pea shooter that's being fired. That is, that's something that's bringing the boom. Renee, if you could go ahead and do another recap, because we get people popping in and popping out, and people are also asking. Yes, that's what I just said. I go AR search 223. I said, yes, I know. That was exactly my point. It's like, yes, you could technically say it's a 20. I've read that it's technically a 22. That's all it is. Renee, did we lose your feed?
Yeah, sorry about that, folks. As you know, like navigating a cell phone in this situation is not ideal. Many of you know that I took video and photography and several, lots of photos during the protest for racial justice. I do have high-level equipment. Unfortunately, I didn't have it here tonight because I was working on writing articles.
Yeah, this is why we're operating on a phone. Renee was not on the payroll tonight. Renee was just eating, and this happened in front of her. So I just want people to understand. This is why we're just with the cell phone tonight.
Absolutely. I was actually at my office working on an article. When I went out to get a break, get a snack, I went to 7-Eleven. I come out with my snacks, and people are running from this area at First and Marion. And they were yelling, active shooter, get down. People were hiding behind buildings. However, being a journalist, of course, I went towards the scene. I do see now Chief Mahaffey approaching. It appears that they're going to be making a statement shortly. We will get all the details, I believe, from them just now. Let me go ahead and turn it over to them.
Hi, I'll sit with Mike.
Hey, Chief.
Yeah.
Yeah, how are you? Yeah, we're rolling.
Evening, I'm Assistant Chief Tom Mahaffey, in charge of the control operations here. This evening around 8:10 p.m., Seattle Police, Record One Center, received reports of a man armed with a rifle on First Avenue around Marion Street. Officers from the West Precinct responded to the area. They located the individual. He's actually in a pickup truck up against the federal building, which is behind me here on Marion Street. Subject was outside of the vehicle and is armed with a long gun. Officers engaged with the subject, and circumstances still under investigation right now led to officers firing shots at the individual. Aid was then rendered both by Seattle police officers on the scene and Seattle Fire. However, the subject is deceased. The incident is being investigated by our Force Investigations team, the Office of Professional Accountability, and the Office of Inspector General were also on scene. Still a very active and ongoing scene. Any information is potentially subject to change, but that's what we know right now.
Were the shots fired inside the building or outside of it?
Outside of the building.
Chief, we heard a report that he may have been shooting at the immigration office.
That's also an investigation. All we have to report is shots fired. No more multiple shots fired? No, nothing else.
Were any officers injured?
No, we don't have any Seattle police officers ever injured.
Do you know if only one officer fired?
Still under investigation, but I believe may have been more than one officer that actually fired. Is it outside the federal building? Correct.
We say long gun, some shot.
I don't have specifics on that. All I've been told is a long gun. So we'll release all that. We'll have more information probably Monday morning. Yeah. Okay.
How much longer is this?
It'll be a while. It's a pretty in-depth investigation of these officers involved shooting incidents.
Obviously, no one's reported hurt or anything like that. Shots fired.
Yeah, it's my understanding we did do a check for any damage or a person's injured and didn't locate any.
Any age range you can provide on this?
I don't have that information right now.
Can you talk to us about who were the officers who responded on scene? Were they established on person or on her right? So were they?
No, it was West Precinct Patrol officers. We just brought the mobile precinct down here just to help us with scene management.
I got two more. Chief, if you could look up at Dino while you address this. Was it a Seattle police officer, and are there any third-party investigators now stepping in with this being involved shooting?
No, we have our own Force Investigations team that investigated, so we don't need a third party.
It's been kind of a violent time in downtown Seattle for the past week or so. And any thoughts on this latest event happening tonight?
No, I mean, we've been out in front of it the best we can be. We have resources at 3rd and Pine. We staff extra patrols on Friday and Saturday nights because of nightlife downtown. But something we're all having to do with. There's a lot of gun violence going on right now. Trying to manage it the best we can.
Chief, do you know how the officers are doing? Obviously, something like this is traumatic. It's never easy.
Right. So actually, some of the first people we have to down and scene are representatives from our wellness unit, SPD wellness unit, and they're after the care of the officers both tonight and then moving forward as well. So definitely a difficult, traumatic event for any officer to be involved in. Okay. Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody. We'll have updates up on the blotter as they become available.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Will the chief be making a statement tonight? Looks like the chief is just on the scene to speak with his sergeants and his leadership. Do you know if Chief Diaz will make a statement today?
What's that?
Do you know if Diaz will make a statement tonight?
No, that was the statement. That's from Chief Mapp.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
So, as you heard, there was an individual who had a long gun. There was multiple 911 calls. Officers responded. Perhaps it sounds like potentially more than one officer fired upon the individual. There, as you heard from the other reporters, a lot of conjecture about why he may have been shooting near the federal building. They did say his truck was near the federal building. I believe they said a white truck. I don't remember for sure. They did collect a lot of evidence, but they didn't find much damage. So it sounds like one individual did expire tonight because of an officer-involved shooting. One or more officers may have shot the individual. So the shots we may have heard may not have all been from this individual. Perhaps the shots we heard were from law enforcement, subduing this individual. We don't know exactly what he was doing with his gun or his weapon. And so it's very possible that he could have been pointing it at officers. That's conjecture at this time. Obviously, a lot more will come out in the days ahead. As Chief Mahaffey said, the force investigation team is on the scene. They're investigating, and they do plan to release more information on Monday. Back to you, David.
Let me clarify a couple of things just because I'm watching the comments go by. First thing, yes, Washington is an open carry state. I want people to understand what initiated the police response in the first place. Officers were responding to shots fired. There were shots fired at Marion and First in downtown Seattle. Marion and First is at the southernmost edge of the downtown business core. You just go a couple of blocks down and you're in Pioneer Square. Individual at First and Marion, reports on the ground is it was a shotgun. That's what witnesses said. Renee is reported because this unfolded right in front of her. Renee was right there where people were running, people were saying active shooter, people were taking cover. That's what elicited the police response, because I saw somebody comment, oh, so the guy's just, and I'm not vamping for the police. I'm facts. I'm about facts. That's it. And I'm just giving you the facts. So that is why Seattle police responded in the first place. We just heard from Assistant Chief Hafferty in his statement that in looking for this individual, they found an individual armed with, his words, long gun, quote unquote. He did not get into the specifics that the individual, he was very careful in his words, but implied there was some engagement between officers and this individual, and the officers fired. There wasn't any information provided if the person fired back or not. And the audio clips that we have played, I am not hearing the sound of, say, different weapons. I'm hearing, what I hear is everything is of the same caliber, coming from the same location when I listen to the echoes and all. So I don't know if this individual, we don't know. You kind of heard everything that we know. Did this person brandish? Did this person threaten? Did this person point at the police? We don't know. But I did see somebody say in their comments, oh, they're just chilling by their pickup truck. That is not what happened here.
That's what I heard. Yeah, David. Sounds like he was engaging with law enforcement in some way. What we do know is ideally law enforcement would not return fire or, shoot an individual without having provocation, whether that being that individual pointing weapons at officers or we're being menacing. If they were obviously shooting, then officers would respond. Potentially that could be reason enough for them to subdue this individual. As Chief Mahaffey said, they did try and provide medical aid to the individual, but he did expire.
Sorry about that.
So a tragedy unfolded here in Seattle tonight for sure. Just to recap, basically, as David mentioned, I was here at my office writing articles when I went to the 7-Eleven to get a snack. And as I was exiting the 7-Eleven, there was multiple gunshots. Individuals were running my direction. They were yelling about, active shooter. There was fear in their eyes. People were ducking behind buildings. As a journalist, we do have that instinct to approach a crime scene, which is what I did. And so I went to First and Marion where the shooting had occurred. Officers were swarming the area with their patrol vehicles. There was probably 30 or more patrol vehicles all around this area. I was here before the police tape. There was officers and members of the Seattle Fire Department and medics providing aid to someone up the street. There was evidence the officers were beginning to collect. They had their flashlights. They were looking for bullet fragments, that kind of thing. They were beginning to mark evidence. And then more members of the leadership began to arrive. Eventually, a member of the mobile police precinct arrived here at the scene. It potentially could have been the one that was at 3rd and Pine. It's unclear. And then later, multiple vehicles began to arrive. CSI is now on the scene as well. They're probably beginning to look at the body of this individual if it is still here at the scene. The thought is maybe this happened more, directly on the property next to the sidewalk of the federal building here in Seattle, and that this individual had a truck, and perhaps the incident may have occurred right there where there's a gate, where federal vehicles are stored. So it's potentially that could have been part of the scene. That does appear where both the medics and law enforcement were focusing their attention when I arrived. Eventually, the officers did cordon off, that area. I did hear a witness saying that he was a staff at this pizzeria on the corner of First and Marion. He left the business because he heard the gunshots, wanted to see what was happening. He saw the individual who had the gun. He went back into the business. I'm not sure exactly if they locked the door, but they did go into a defensive position. That business did close. Individuals, both patrons and staff, began to leave. Obviously, even though the scene had been secured, they were concerned for their safety. And obviously, David would be rattled by this situation that happened right next door to their place of employment.
Sure. And the other thing I think people need to understand is where in the charged environment we are nationally, individual that is firing by the federal building, right in downtown Seattle. This is just going to be this is going to be a spicier situation. And of course, another thing, Renee, that we don't know, because they're saying we'll find out more on Monday, and they're being a little tight-fisted on details compared to other incidents like this. It's a question that's only popped in my head now. It would be interesting to know, did this happen, essentially on the sidewalk in the federal property area, or did this happen in the street, right? Was this on federal property, or was this on city property?
It did appear that they were focusing their attention near that gate to the garage of this federal building. And so I would say that, it's kind of like the sidewalk and then also a little bit into the actual property of the federal building here in Seattle. A reporter did ask if this was related to frustrations the individual had with immigration. It's unclear if that is just conjecture or if they have information.
Yeah, that's it. That's a real specific question.
Absolutely, David. Which leads me to believe there may be some more information that news outlet might have.
Yeah, maybe. I'm going to go ahead and roll that clip one more time, and I think I'm going to call it good at this point.
Me too, David.
And,
I'm obviously hungry, and the adrenaline is beginning to wear off, and I'm beginning to feel a little nervous about what I witnessed here tonight.
So let me roll this clip one more time. So the clip that I'm going to roll here, it doesn't show anything. It's more audio. It's certainly that we would never show something like this on TikTok. A, just out of pure decorum, and B, I like my channel. I want to keep it. And so with that said, this is a 16-second clip. Renee, I know you probably really can't see it much at all. It'll probably just be a postage stamp on your screen. It definitely appears that it is looking down first, because again, this doesn't look very hilly from this angle. And I'm going to go ahead and roll that clip. We're going to let it play through one more time. And it's a little hard to discern because there's still a fair amount of echo in there. I've listened to that clip multiple times now. I feel like I'm hearing about 10 shots.
Yeah, it's, honestly, David, it was, the shots were coming from every direction, and not because there was that many shots, but because it was bouncing off buildings as I was approaching the scene, or, as I was near the 7-Eleven. It did travel about a block and a half, the sound did. So it sounded much bigger, and it sounded much bigger, than perhaps it was. But yeah, 10 shots. It does seem consistent with what I heard. However, obviously I wasn't counting at the time. But yeah, thank you so much, David, for doing that analysis.
Well, Renee, again, this was just pure synchronicity that it was on. You and I have been lucky like this. I think this is about the third time you've just been at some random scene downtown, and I was either just happened to be in the studio at that moment. We didn't have anything planned, and this worked out really well. I'm going to call out one more time. If y'all aren't following Renee Raketty, Renee is a great journalist. She covers the beat in Seattle. Her focus is on LGBTQIA issues. She's part of the Alphabet Mafia. But with that said, she also covers social issues, Seattle crime, protest scene. And so tonight she's a crime reporter, kind of thrust into the situation. And why don't you give another shout out for Jimmy, Renee, because Jimmy is an amazing person to follow. Remember, let's not say exactly where it's at, but I'm told that there's this app called, I think it's called Instagram. I hear there's some really amazing pictures that you can find on Instagram.
Yeah, street photojournalism. Follow Jimmy. His photography is top notch. One of the best photojournalists, street photojournalists in Seattle. His work has been carried by many news outlets. And you've probably seen some of it and you didn't even recognize it. Yeah. He honestly covers shootings, stabbings, crime here on the streets of Seattle. At least, every couple days there's something new on his Instagram. So be sure to follow Jimmy. Obviously follow me if you haven't. Follow David if you haven't. Me and David have spent a lot of time on the streets covering news events, mostly the protests for Black Lives Matter or racial justice, depending on your perspective. We marched through the streets of Seattle together, documenting these protests. David has an excellent documentary that's available both on his Facebook, his YouTube. So look up Malcontent News if you're interested in the protest coverage.
If you go to our link tree, if you go to the link tree on my link, I'm not on my personal account. I'm on the Malcontent News account. But if you go to our link tree, there is a direct link to that documentary on our link tree.
Absolutely. So David and I are very familiar with one another. Luckily, he brought me on the team as a field producer. It's been an honor and a privilege. I would thank you again, David, so much for helping me tonight to broadcast this event. Obviously, when we began, we had no idea that unfortunately someone had lost their life here tonight, that officers have been involved in a shooting. That information came to us after the fact. You've been good in bringing some of this footage that's available out in the community on Twitter or other outlets and bringing that into the broadcast tonight. I'm grateful you were in the studio to provide that kind of perspective. As I said, I just happened to be in the right place at the wrong time. Let's put it that way. But also, I wasn't expecting anything like this, David. I literally had my food waiting for me. It's still on the curb here.
Well, Renee, go ahead and have your ice melted soft drink and your 7-Eleven food.
It is warm at this point. It is warm. Those nachos are cold.
You've totally earned your cold nachos. Welcome to the world of journalism, everybody. Renee, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. Take care of yourself. I know I will chat with you later tonight, and if not, tomorrow morning.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
I want to thank the team who modded tonight. I want to thank David for providing some assistance and providing this coverage that you saw tonight. And I want to thank all of you who tuned in to this breaking news event here in the streets of Seattle. Officer involved shooting first in Marion. More details to come Monday. You all have a good night. Hopefully a safe weekend. Good night.